This is Modern Mindset, the show where we discuss the psychology and emotions of finance and business. I'm your host, Adam Cox, and joining me today is Saleem Sheikh, a senior partner at GSE, but also, and most interestingly, a trusted advisor to entrepreneurs and business owners that actually guide them through some of the kind of problems and situations through their life. Welcome to the show, Saleem.
Thank you very much, Adam. It's great to be here.
Excellent. And you didn't initially want to be this kind of high-profile city lawyer. What was your original dream when you were younger?
Very true. My dream was actually to be an airline pilot. I wanted to fly big jets. I always loved aeroplanes, and I wanted to become a commercial airline pilot. And indeed, I took a route to become that by becoming an air cadet, which is part of the Royal Air Force, and went on to get a pre-PPL. But unfortunately, then my dad stepped in and said he wasn't keen because we'd had in Africa a tragic accident. My uncle was a pilot. He had his own plane, was flying to one of our businesses, and unfortunately had a plane crash and died.
So that was your dad's brother?
No, it was my mum's sister's husband.
Okay. But that family loss obviously created some worries, concerns that you might kind of follow in those kind of footsteps.
Yeah, I think so. It had been a tragic loss. It had had a lot of impact on the bigger family. He left behind a very young wife, young children, and lots of pain and suffering that followed, for the family. So I think there was that fear, yes.
But you weren't pushed into the legal profession. It sounds like that it was perhaps something of interest as well as flying.
Yes, it was. I was I used to, as a kid, watch a program called Perry Mason, which was the famous American show, A Lawyer in the Wheelchair, and also Crown Court. But also as a young, maybe 10, 11-year-old guy, if I ever saw that there was a problem with a product or anything, I'd always be very keen to, either for myself or a family friend, write. So I remember on one occasion we found a fruit stalk in a jam jar. And I wrote to the manufacturers complaining and saying this was dangerous and not acceptable. And I got a very nice letter back and a big box of jam and sweeties. So did that a few times, whether I found something in a soap bar or a bar of chocolate. Always interested in sort of enforcing rights.
So you had a natural gift really to kind of articulate points of, unfairness
you could say that. Yes.
and that kind of stuff and create some kind of resolution or outcome to that.
Yeah, I think it's well put. Resolutions. I like to find resolutions, solutions for people of any kind of problem that they're in.
And now you're working mainly with entrepreneurs, business owners and their families. Why do you think you naturally gravitated toward that, kind of element of law?
Because I'm very much a people's person. I think that, as you said at the beginning, I'm a trusted advisor now. So I relate to people. I can be empathetic to what they're going through. And so that side of a person's life has always been of interest to me. So while they might be a very high-flying entrepreneur, they're a human being, they're a father, they're a son, they're a child. They have issues that we all do.
And can you give us an idea of some of the reasons, perhaps, that, let's say a high flyer, an entrepreneur, a business owner suddenly needs the support of a trusted advisor with your level of legal experience?
It can be many reasons. One, which we all forget, we are mortal. So somebody passes away. A businessman's business partner passes away, for example, and all of a sudden a great business is facing now that person's gone. His shares may or may not go to someone the entrepreneur likes. So all of a sudden he needs advice. It could be a situation where he has a dispute with his partner. It could be a situation where they've gone into a different territory. I do a lot of international work. So they've got a successful business in England and they've decided to venture out into, let's say, Africa, for example. And they haven't quite factored in doing business in different countries, a completely different business, even doing the same business in a different country. So there are many, many incidents that can happen where an entrepreneur, even though he's extremely skilled at his own business, actually really needs the help of a trusted advisor who can listen to him confidentially, understand his issues and try and offer some objective advice.
And you're right. We are all mortal. It's I think death and taxes, the two certainties in life. How can it be managed, let's say, with an unexpected bereavement? You know, you mentioned your kind of uncle that was unexpected.
Yes.
How detrimental can it be with an unexpected bereavement? And what are the ways in which someone like you can actually work with, let's say, a business owner or their families to make sure that you navigate that kind of tricky period?
I think, look, there are many aspects of bereavement if we're going to talk about it. One is the physical loss of the person and the effect, the emotional effect it has on the family. If it's a small business, it can have a huge effect on the business. Some entrepreneurs are the business. And if that person was no longer around, well, you know, today we can look, Apple's still around, but it's not the same business as it was without Steve Jobs. What can you do? I think you can do pre-planning. So we ask every client to think about what would happen. It's not a very nice question, but it's one that if they were to pass away tonight, what would tomorrow look like for their family, for their children, for their business? What legacy are they leaving? Because we can all do something while we're alive. Once we're dead and buried or cremated, that's it. You know, we've gone to another world, or we're nowhere to be seen. So what arrangements have you made? What things are in your head that aren't written down? And do you want to leave some kind of written guidance with people that you trust? So you, for example, make a will and you appoint trusted advisors or trusted family members as your executors. If you have assets in different jurisdictions, you have to make sure you have wills in different jurisdictions. So if you've got a house in England but a holiday home in Spain, you've got to make sure that the holiday home in Spain, what's going to happen to it if you die? So you plan. I think that's very important. You do write things down because those things are valid if they're done in a correct way post your death. And also in terms of your business, that you look at your business and again have planning, put in place succession, always have a number 2, someone who can pick things up, someone who knows the pinch points of a business. They could be very confidential information, but someone who is able to steer a ship, because a business that's highly successful that has no succession is actually not very successful.
So it is kind of thinking ahead, isn't it? It's kind of getting the ducks in a row so that if the worst does happen, that you know there is a plan of action in case of that. Can you think of obviously respecting confidentiality, but can you think of a time where maybe a bereavement did take place, but the way in which you were able to work with it actually managed some of the issues around that? Yes.
Over a 37-year career, obviously I've been through many cases, but one in particular was a very sudden death of a young entrepreneur who happened to be running a successful family business. All of a sudden he within 2 weeks passed away, and that had huge impact immediately on his family, young wife, young children, financial implications, and then implications for his business. So I think the first thing to do was to give the family confidence, because they felt very exposed. Family had no idea of how, dad, husband ran everything. There wasn't information around. So giving them confidence, telling them there was a way through this, reassuring them, and then going about by involving them, because there's no point just doing it all for them and they wouldn't learn what had happened. So getting them involved, getting their children involved, and some of the kids were sort of late teens. And over a period of time, the family gained confidence, managed to restore their lives, and are now successful in certainly in a financial sense and in an entrepreneurial sense. Obviously, the loss is never replaced. But I think now when they look back on where they were when the bereavement happened, they would say, I'm sure if you ask them, that I had been a fundamental part of that process of bringing them to today. Actually, they did it themselves. I facilitated them. I helped them do it. I guided them, certainly, but I made sure they did it, so they had the confidence that they could do it.
It's almost like stabilizers on a bike. You're there to support, but they have to pedal, they have to steer. Otherwise, they're not going to learn and be dependent. In terms of how most people think about law, you said that TV shows and things like that was your original inspiration for becoming a lawyer. But of course, it's not what you see on TV and in movies. Is there a perception, perhaps, that either law is glamorous and exciting as you see on TV, or just dull and boring and not really relevant to people's lives?
I think it's a bit of both. I think people think when they watch TV programs like Suits that it's very glamorous. But to be honest, for most people, unless they're buying a house, and they never really encounter a lawyer, and they see lawyers as fairly boring people wearing grey suits, sitting in ivory towers, and they deal with work for big corporations. So I think lawyers do suffer from this, and perhaps they're to blame from it to some extent, because they do project this image of being slightly elitist. They use language that most people won't understand. Henceforth, therefore, these are outdated concepts of language. But clients need to understand, and lawyers need to understand, that law actually is made for people. So there's a law for everything. And people do need to feel comfortable that law is not all boring. It can be fun. They can go and talk to their lawyer without any obligation, and just say what they feel, what their issues are. It doesn't always have to be about negative things. Some very positive things, that they're starting out in life. What do they do about business? What do they do about their career? If they've got ideas. So, young people today are developing products or apps. How do they protect them before they take them to a big company who steals their idea? So simple things like that. So even taking some small measures, which don't cost a lot of money, actually can help clients significantly. And
you're absolutely right, because there's never been lower barriers to entry to turn a concept or an idea into a business that can be quickly monetized. How, can it make the difference of having the right legal protection in place and not, between a business fizzling out to nothing and being, hugely successful?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. So if you've got an idea, or you've developed a process that you, and in a world today where things are copied very quickly, that if you can and is capable of protecting it, you get it protected, whether it's a trademark or a patent or a design right, that you do protect yourself, you're going to make a huge difference. Because if you don't, someone else will take it and run with it, and may have more money and more contacts to exploit that right further than you, and it may mean that you lose out very significantly.
And I understand recently you've worked with quite an innovative company in the music area that had something that again could grow and scale quite well, but needed legal assistance.
Yes, we do a lot of work in the music business. When I said law is not all grey and boring, it isn't. We actually have quite a lot of fun in the legal world. So we've been helping. Music really has gone from being vinyl to tape to CD, and now being a piece of software. So we all have it on our phones or our tablets, and we've been helping the rights owners protect the intellectual property in these. So whether it's remote jukeboxes or music online or streaming services, ultimately, how do you protect the revenue from those? So if you don't have any revenue, then ultimately people are going to stop singing and you're going to have people who don't want to become musicians because they're not going to get paid for it. So as long as there is a recognition that there are ways of protecting yourself, and you try and invoke those, and there are special packages now available for startups, simple things that you can do. In fact, we last year attended a business show at a national business show, where it was very well attended. We had great feedback on what a new business could do. And as you said, quite rightly, the barriers to entry are very, very low. You can set up a new business from your bedroom with your computer.
And you mentioned Steve Jobs before, and there are lots of tech entrepreneurs, Bill Gates, for example, that very early on in their life, they came up with an idea and turned that into some of the most successful businesses in the world. Would you say that the Americans or different countries in the world are better than the English at kind of taking an idea and kind of running with it than perhaps we are in this country?
I think that there is a bit of I think in America they have a can-do mentality, American dream. If you go and talk to a banker or an advisor, they will say, yeah, do it. go for it. They have a record of trying 10 times before they can succeed. I think here we are a bit more conservative. There is, particularly lawyers, would tend to look at the risk side more, being more risk averse. But I think it's changing gradually. I think the younger generation now, I can see that in my own children, are beginning to be a little bit more creative, a little bit more aggressive, because that's what the world needs. And I think all of a sudden businesses now have become, even a small business, but through the internet, can become an international business. So if you've got a platform where you're selling product and you're selling it on Amazon, then technically your market is the whole world.
And let's say someone's listening right now and they have a business and it's doing well in the UK. What kind of things should they be thinking about to turn that UK business into a global business?
I think firstly they've got to see what their business is. Are they selling a product or a service? If it's a product, then if they're going to go into another territory, where are they going to make the product? Can it carry on being made where it is? They've got to very much, I think, look at the country they're entering into. That country will have rules and regulations. Every country has different rules, whether it's tax. I think they've got to do a bit of due diligence on go into that market, go and talk to people in that business, or pose as secret customers. But I would say do some due diligence. Don't sit in London and think, right, we want to open in Paris or in Kenya and just think it's going to be the same as opening in Manchester. It's not. It's different people, different culture, different currency, different laws. So what I would say to them is do some due diligence. Talk to a lawyer here who's got some experience of clients doing business in different territories. That's what I do a lot of. And he can guide you and say, well, there are actual free services available. There are most foreign governments have an international office of doing business. Are there grants available? So just do some research, and don't be afraid to go and talk. Even if it is you're a small business, don't be afraid to phone up what you think is a city law firm. Phone them up, tell them your idea, say you'd like to have a meeting. I'd say be confident in your idea. Go and talk to them and see if they can help in any way.
And does it make a difference in terms of, let's say that someone had big plans, they want, a global expansion. To what extent is getting the ducks in the row legally important to scale? Whether that's accessing finance or kind of, leveraging new markets.
There's always a balance, because a client wants to spend as much as he wants on day one on his product or his branding or his advertising. But I think getting your ducks in a row is critically important, certainly for the absolutely essential things. So make sure that if you've got one of the key things for your business is a particular component you need or particular substance, that you have a good contract in place. If you're supplying to customers and you've got contracts, that those contracts are long term and they are robust. Because anyone who wants to expand is going to need funding. Now, either you borrow money from a bank or you get investors. Investors inevitably will come and look not just at the idea but the whole setup and the operation, and they will take a review of risk. And I think risk management is a key thing in today's world, at so many levels.
And you mentioned risks, and part of risk is kind of preparing against changes and variables and things like that. And obviously we're getting closer and closer to the actual Brexit negotiations being finalised, but also a potential trade war. To what extent do we need to kind of focus on what we're doing rather than worry too much about these things that we can't control?
I think, look, one's always got to be alive to what's going on, because I think business today is truly, even a small business, we're no longer just a small island. We're affected by what goes on. So our biggest market was Europe, 500 million people on our doorstep. We're effectively stepping out of that. So I think you should be alive of what's going on. And depending on the type of business you are, if you're a business that sells a lot of stuff to Germany, or buys a lot of stuff from Spain, then you will need to be thinking, what's going to happen? Am I going to have to be paying duties on this stuff? If your business is very much more domestic, then I think you can be less concerned. However, we have people who have businesses where they employ lots of workers, casual workers. Most of them are from Europe. They are concerned about what's going to happen to take the construction industry. I think people are very concerned because the labour force isn't going to be there. So I think it's a balance of sort of focusing on your business, but also keeping an eye open what's going to happen. There will be changes, I think, that affect everyone with Brexit coming. But I don't think one should be, be down or gloomy about it. You've got to stay positive. Ask questions. If you don't know the answer, don't worry. Ask someone. There's always someone who knows. And I think a good lawyer, a good trusted advisor, will always direct you to someone. So don't think, well, why should I ask him about education? And people come to me and say, look, I want to send my kids to schools. What do you think? I'm not an education specialist, but I've got a pretty good idea of how, brought up my own kids. So go and talk to someone you trust. Find someone in life that you can trust. Normally it's a lawyer. That could be good. It could be a doctor. It could be a friend, but someone you trust and someone you know is going to give you sincere advice, including saying, I don't know the answer, but you should go and talk to someone else.
And in your extensive experience in the legal profession, what would you say are the key emotional drivers that potentially can get people in legal problems?
I think temper, having a temper, quick reaction, arrogance, knowing that you're always right, not trying to look at things from the other person's perspective, not being a good listener. I think if you just want to hear what you want to hear and not see what the other person's saying, can get you into difficulties. I think the advice is always, you've got to have a firm approach, but, listen to the counterparty, because we all have to deal with other people. Respect their views, even if you don't agree with them. Look at things from their point of view. I always say to my clients, just put yourself in that person's seat. Try and think what he's thinking. Maybe he's not being so unreasonable. But someone who's just so arrogant is going to say, well, I'm right. Well, how dare he do this? I want to take him to the highest court in the land. I mean, it's a recipe for a disaster.
And, specializing in advising successful business people, entrepreneurs, it's not just about their life, is it? Because, there is a legacy, there is an element at which, as you quite rightly said, we're all mortal, that we need to start thinking about the next generations. How important is it to have a trusted advisor that helps navigate that kind of journey?
I think it's a very good question, Adam. I think it's absolutely critically important, and there's something that in our business we are focusing on. And we're leading an initiative on that through our marketing team, and also actually my daughter, who's come into the business, is running our Next Gen program. I think it's very important to connect with the next generation, for them to know who you are. There might be an age difference, and they may not relate to you as well as you relate to their parents. But I think you've got to be able to communicate with them, see how they see the world, what their plans are, and what the challenges are for them. And I think if you can get in your business younger people who can connect with that next generation, that really does help. That's one of our strategies, to bring in, the next generation of lawyers, so that these legacies can be continued. The next generation have different visions. They're much more aggressive, I think. They're more global. And I think they are much more, we have become a society where people know their rights more. You can Google almost any answer now on any issue, including legals. People know their rights much more. People want to enforce their rights more. So I think it's critically important that the next generation are involved.
And if you were going to offer, let's say, an entrepreneur or business owner a couple of tips that they could apply that would actually help them in their life and their business, what would you say are the things that really could be taken away and applied pretty much straight away and would create value?
I think the first thing I would say to an entrepreneur is, it's not all about your business. I think too many entrepreneurs focus just on their business. It gives them a great drive, but that's at the cost of their family or their health. So I would say have a balance. Be happy. Make sure you enjoy what you're doing. Don't work too hard, because no one's going to thank you for achieving so much but not being there to and that's what I find with a lot of entrepreneurs. I've had personal experience of people who've driven themselves really too much. Slow down, enjoy life, and too many people have a plan and want to wait to get to the end of the plan before they enjoy the journey. So if you've got a 5-year plan, enjoy year 1 as well, enjoy year 2. Don't just wait for year five and then say, I'm going to have a big enjoyment plan. You may not make it, or you may make it, but people around you may not make it. The other thing I would say is to try and have some kind of risk management to your personal life and to your, without being morbid, and to your business. You know, what if things, have a plan B? What if things don't quite work the way I want them to work? Number three, have a good advisor. Plugging myself here, I suppose, but I really think a good advisor is worth his weight in gold. Someone who'll give you genuine advice, including say to you, don't do this. You're being silly. You're great at what you do. You know, I had a client who was great at the business he was in, but wanted to invest in something that he wasn't in because all his friends were investing in. Didn't take advice. Unfortunately, did it and lost a lot of money. Affected the main business as well. So, you know, take advice. You know, those are the sort of key areas I think you would ask someone to consider.
Thank you. And if someone wanted to find out more information about you or GSE, where's the best place where they can go for more information?
The best place is our website, www.gsesolicitors.com. They can Google us. We're based in the city in Chancery Lane, but we're available on phone, on email. We're also on Twitter, and I think we're also on Facebook. So we blog quite a lot. So you'll be able to find us. We're happy to come and talk to you. You'll see us around at various events. We really like the next generation. We want to encourage more young generation so we want to spend more time understanding what they are doing, and we invite people to come and do work placements with us as well. And that's not just them learning about us, it's us learning about them and the new ways of working, and the fact that, you know, paperless offices are here. Everyone wants to work off smartphones. Everyone wants an immediate response. You know, the days are gone when a solicitor got a letter and he had replied 3 days later. You're expected to respond pretty much instantly because we live in an instant world.
Absolutely. Saleem, you've been a fantastic guest and sharing a lot of wisdom with us as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining me on Modern Mindset in association with Share Radio. Join me again next week for more.